If you collect from the economic mule called Texas the same dollars that you currently force it to carry as a property tax, you let it carry that tax as a sales tax instead of as a property tax, and it'll plow that field all day long and as though it's not carrying a feather on its back. It can do that weight. It can work under the burden of that weight. That study says you get rid of property tax in Texas and you'll see a $3 billion increase in net personal income the first year, and you'll add 150,000 jobs, real private sector jobs in the Texas economy. I know the governor has tried to paint a rosy picture and tell you recession. What recession? We don't have a recession in Texas. We have not had this level of unemployment in the state of Texas since Texas defeated Democrat Mark White. I was going to say Bill White. No, that's next year. Mark White for governor in 1986.
Right.
That's how long it's been since we've had this level of unemployment in Texas. And we are where we are today, not because it's some freak of nature. It is a very predictable path that we're on. You grow government, your economy is going to struggle, and you are going to have periods of recession. What do you mean, grow government, Deborah? We've got conservative leaders in Austin. Yeah, we do. Or at least they claim to be wearing the red jerseys. But our debt in Texas, when Governor Perry went into office as a state, was $12 billion. It is over $31 billion today, nearly tripled in 8 years. Most of us believe, erroneously, that the state of Texas has a balanced budget. It's kind of one of those Bill Clinton definitions. You know, it depends on what the definition of is. Well, here's the state's balanced budget definition. As long as you can make your note payments, your budget is balanced. We're spending every dime we take in. We've tripled our debt. But so far, we're making the mortgage payment. So our budget is balanced. There's not a one of you in here that works for a private sector business. If you manage in any way in that business and you went to your shareholders and said you were doing well as a company, and they looked at the balance sheet and they saw that your long-term liabilities had tripled, that they would say you had a balanced budget. We've tripled our debt in Texas. We have all but maxed out our credit limit. The state of Texas, in order that we didn't incur a bunch of debt, has a constitutional debt limit ceiling. Our note payment, our mortgage payments, our credit card payments, if you will, cannot exceed 5% of the state's income. Today we're at 4.85%. We're that close to having maxed out our debt limit ceiling in this state. We've tripled our debt. We're at a 20-plus year high unemployment rate. We are so far in debt as a state. You know, anybody that's ever taken debt, you take a note out of the bank, you get what's called an amortization schedule. How long is it going to take you to pay that debt off? In Texas, if we do not take on another dime of debt, we will get out of debt in 2047. Balanced budget? You and I would never call it that. We would never call it that. That is bad government policy under people who would sell you a bill of goods. Snake oil salesmen, they used to call them in the olden days, come in and tell us everything is rosy and wonderful and this will fix you right up. And we've been drinking the medicine and not asking the questions and demanding accountability and excellence in leadership. You get rid of property tax in Texas. You begin to have that conversation. I have said all over this state that we need a new litmus test in the Republican Party. You got to be pro-life and you got to be pro-property. you nominate on March 2nd Republican candidates who will commit to eliminating property tax in Texas. That is a bill in the legislature that will rescind the authority to levy a property tax, and another bill that creates a broader authority for local government to raise the revenue that it needs with a sales or a consumption tax, and you will see a $3 billion increase in net personal income and 150,000+ jobs added to the Texas economy. And then the naysayers will come along and say, no, listen to her, what experience does she have, how does she know this? Well, how about this? You know, Art Laffer, I didn't make that up, that's his number one. Texas Public Policy Foundation, well respected in Texas conservative government circles in all of Texas. And number 3, a man by the name of Talmadge Heflin. Mr. Heflin was longtime state representative from the Houston area. He was head of the House Appropriations Committee during that last budget shortfall that the governor likes to talk about when Texas had a $10 billion budget shortfall. Talmadge Heflin nurtured us through that crisis, walked that budget through and got it passed such that we didn't increase taxes and we were able to meet that budget deficit. Talmadge Heflin is well respected as someone who knows state finance as well as anyone. And you know what he said about getting rid of property tax in Texas? Relatively simple. Relatively simple. Don't let the seed of fear and doubt be planted in your life. You understand with me and stand shoulder to shoulder with other Texans that this is about restoring freedom in this state, and let's get it done. I had that conversation with Ken Paxton. Mr. Paxton is a representative from up north of Dallas. He has been a champion, a lone voice, if you will, one of few in the Texas legislature who has talked about eliminating property tax. And I said, Ken, you know, I understand it's pretty simple for schools, because while all of us live under the notion that we pay local school property tax, there really are 2 people in Washington and Austin behind a dark curtain that divvy up the proceeds and send them out to the school districts. And so as long as the taxes are raised, it doesn't matter for school finance whether those are property taxes or sales taxes. As long as they are out there dedicated to schools, the school funding remains basically unblemished, not a ripple. But where the devil starts to get his finger into the details is in the cities and the water districts and the fire districts and the hospital districts and the counties. How do we get those sales taxes? How do we set that rate? How do we know what that rate needs to be? Because it's going to be a little different in San Antonio than it is in Lytle, Texas. Because they don't have the sales tax base you have here. How do we do that? And I said, Ken, you've been talking about this a lot longer than I have. He said, Deborah, when we decide to get it done, we'll get it done. Don't let the seed of fear and doubt be planted here. You will sacrifice freedom for future generations of Texans. Let's understand private property is an essential element of freedom. Commit to eliminating that property tax and finding another way. We've got 10 months, Texas. Nominate Debra Medina on March 2nd, next Tuesday. You know you've got my commitment to that. We'll know who our state representative candidates are going to be, and we'll start having a conversation so that by the time we get to next January, we'll have a bill and we'll have a plan. 10 months is plenty enough time for bright people in Texas to find a solution, and we can get this fixed. So eliminate private property tax. One of the things just quickly, one of the things that I think we've talked about in sales taxes, and I want to toss it out because I'm waiting for y'all to start chewing on it and throwing it back and telling us why it won't work and how we can refine it. One of the arguments that you hear about sales taxes all the time is that people don't purchase where they live. They travel, especially if you're like me and you live in a Wharton or you live in a Lytle. You come into the big city, there's no Best Buys in Lytle. And you need a new TV and you want to go to Best Buy and buy it. Are we at a place in our society without violating your privacy